Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the Tea? This is our podcast, our live stream where we talk about what's going on in Nevada, in our government, and with local Nevadans. I'm Laura Martin. I'm the executive director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, and I'm here today with our guest, MassLib co-director Jagada Chambers. Welcome, Jagada. Yeah, and today we're covering Black History Month as well as justice reform topics. And without further ado, let's start our conversation with how are you doing today, Jagada?
Man, greetings, Laura, and all Planistas. No complaints. As busy as you would imagine, but excited. Definitely a period every couple years that I'm definitely engaged in and excited to be a part of.
Nice. So, can you share a little bit about your background and how you came to be involved in MassLib?
Wow, you. No, sincerely, when I moved to Nevada nearly 10 years ago, and my debut, to be fully transparent, someone who I revere in Northern California, the executive director of Silicon Valley Debug, they put me in contact with Leslie, who was actually a part of your team at Plan. And then from there, I just got immersed head first into the work. I know that Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, God bless his soul, he was really impactful in pulling me in. And I feel like just falling in with the Plan folks in that 2018 district attorney's race really just helped me put my seatbelt on and get in, cemented into the work out here under y'all's leadership.
Yeah. So, if somebody was to ask you mass liberation for what or who? What exactly do you mean by that?
Ooh, mass liberation, I would say, as a collective. We're a mass liberation organization that is rooted in Black liberation. We feel that the liberation of our Black folks, globally, right, will impact the masses. Hence the word mass liberation. The route to mass liberation is through Black liberation, and I feel like that's what mass liberation is always going to be standing on.
What are some of the bills that mass liberation has helped pass in the legislative session that you're particularly proud of?
uh, you know, it'll always start for me with Assembly Bill 431 back in that 2019 session. I'm directly impacted as a formerly incarcerated person. That voting was sacred in my household with my mother and father. So when I lost that right to vote, it definitely stung. Coming here in Nevada and helping getting that law passed. Not only did it impact the state, it impacted my life tremendously and gave me my first gainful employment out of incarceration. So I'm always going to be indebted to Assembly Bill 431. I know we have Assembly Bill 116 that was passed, I think, in the 21 session that really decriminalized traffic tickets and pulled that out of the criminal sector and put that into a civic manner, helping our folks not go on high speed chases and be scared to lose their freedom over a traffic warrant. So again, when we talk about legislation that for a fact has impacted our communities and Black people specifically, that's another one that I'll always be happy about. Dignity and health bill last session was big. And then, Assembly Bill 230 in the 2023 session was very impactful for me. That was when we took the the pathway of sending a youth to adult court away with direct files under the leading guidance of Assemblyman C.H. Miller. Again, at that point, I think it was about 220 direct files that had happened over a 7-year period, and over 90% of them were Black and brown babies. So we really knew who that was impacting. And again, always legislation that's community led. It isn't myself or Leslie or the base just making up stuff. It's stuff that's coming out of trauma that our community has had to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of that, we know that the former sheriff of Clark County is now our governor. Do you feel like that's made it harder or easier to pass justice reform, or maybe it's just same old, same old?
You know what? I think he's really like a wild card, if you ask me. We had legislation last year, Assembly Bill 286, that really impacted folks having an opportunity to vote in jail. He vetoed the most bills that our state had ever seen vetoed, but yet we got a signature on that one. So me personally, I always just, you know, how you deal with a reptilian, you just kind of be cognizant of what you know can happen. But I think this year specifically, with the kind of transition and what our whole entire country is going through, I anticipate him vetoing even more bills this year. Anything that don't align with not only his vision but with his big brother's vision, I think is going to have a tough chance passing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we know February is Black History Month. What are some ways that people can keep the momentum going for Black liberation?
Ooh, you know, I was blessed to be in the Capitol building a couple days ago, and to be honest, just seeing Joe Neal's face, right? Senator Joe Neal, seeing how he was recognized in the Hall of Fame and his Senate picture and his Majority Leader picture, all of that kind of just gassed me up, at the very least, to get through the session, because I know that man breaking down them barriers. He was having way more challenging conversations than we could ever dream of having, especially in that building. So I feel like when we have the opportunity, I know that Mass Liberation Project will be having a formerly incarcerated day at the Capitol. If you can get in that building, which Black folks haven't been um, regularly in that space, you can kind of get a little gas and realize that the fight that we're fighting has been fought way harder in a tougher period. So I feel like it gives me a lot of momentum. And then the reality of our country, to be honest, Laura, if you're reading a newspaper, watching the news, watching TikTok, and you're just ho hum, it's business as usual, I can kind of humbly give up on people at this period because it's such a magnified effort. You know, my father used to always say Asians was niggas of the 90s. Everything that Black people go through, it's a nut. Someone else is just gonna come, and our undocumented brothers and sisters are catching hell right now. And if that don't garner any gumption in you and make you feel some kind of way as a Black man, I feel um that society has done enough to make you motivated to get involved and try to do what you can do to lay your brick. Even our kids, I'm a father, that I can only lay my brick. I pray things change in his lifetimes, but I know that me personally, all I can do is try to do my part to change it.
I love that. And yes, you are a very good father. I can't wait to see the man your son grows up to be. He's going to be running stuff very soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you were doing at the building, the roundtable that you had?
And again, shout out the queen, Miss Neal, to even give space on such a beautiful celebration, if you will, for Black History Month. So we were definitely in the Capitol and was able to have a criminal justice panel. Myself, Assemblyman Jovan Jackson, Assembly Member Cecilia Gonzalez, and myself, and Leslie Turner. To me, that's from the base, from your Bill Belichick umbrella. All of us came through playing, doing phones, knocking doors, really getting immersed in this work. So it was a real kind of out of body experience for me, even seeing the photographs of us and just the commitment, Laura. I know I'm preaching to the choir when because you've been committed for so long as well, but I really was able to just reflect on our commitment and in the commitment to helping people, whether you're in a cage or whether you've been freed from a cage, or whether you're running from them trying to get you in a cage. I feel like we have been true to the fight, if you will. And so just being able to have an honest dialogue, especially with some people in attendance that probably don't have the vantage point in which we look at criminal legal reform and what could and should happen. So I think it was a eye-opening space for a lot of people, and then it was a celebratory space too, in the sense that, while the the Nevada Black Caucus is recognizing Black history and contributions, they opened up a space for us to contribute. So I was always humbled by that, going in as well as leaving.
Yeah, it was powerful. I'm sad I had to miss it, but
I know I
glad
saw
that
you in the building, though.
yeah.
It was funny when we were exchanging. I was like, "Oh yeah, duh! I just saw you."
I don't think I saw you a picture of you presenting a bill.
Yeah, I was not presenting. I was just giving some positive testimony in support of Senate Bill 140. Senator Orenshaw has some legislation that will positively impact that juvenile justice system. Lord, we had 81 certifications. That's where they send another pathway to send a youth to adult court. And fetal alcohol syndrome is real. Okay, there's some things that happen, and with our socioeconomic realities, it impacts our Black and brown babies. Oftentimes it goes undiagnosed. The test is ridiculously expensive. I think like $7,500. Definitely not feasible for our communities. And so the senator is trying to make sure that is a pathway for these kids to hopefully get some relief if it's recognized that you have this syndrome. So again, it was just an honor, and I'm sure Senator Orenshaw. He always has a piece of legislation that's going to impact the babies. So I even said as much in that space. One, as a Clark County School District father, man, I appreciate you having a commonplace reality of looking at these children, like you said, probably as an awesome father too, because the vantage point he's always been committed to. It's easy to get behind a piece of legislation like that, and I'm happy that my brother was able to capture it, because I do love the photograph as well.
Yeah, shout out to Chase McCurdy, who always captures beautiful pictures of our movement. And what is it, 33 Gallery?
33 Gallery. And like you said, capturing, how many times have we testified? I mean, I got hundreds, to be honest, already, public comment and testimony, but something about that photograph at that moment, and I know it was for the babies. It was like, oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, let's get into some of these bills. One from our sister Cecilia Gonzalez is Assembly Bill 218, and it's mandating the court send a text reminder for your court dates. Now, why would that be important? Why is not a phone call enough?
It's a new day and age, right? It's 2025, and the reality is, it's always been a trap to get our people continuously um, intertwined into that system. Because if you failure to appear, now you're a stone cold criminal. Now they view that in the vantage point of court hearings as a escape, if you will. So doing anything to make sure we can keep our people who are already struggling to get and navigate through that system, any kind of help to continue it not being a hindrance. Again, it's a game changer. And then, to me, to be honest, how many times is your phone off? You might miss a call. You get a text at the right moment. That can really impact not somebody's day, but the next couple of weeks of their life, depending on what they're going to court for. So again, shout out Assemblywoman Gonzalez, having legislation right, coming out of the base, having legislation that will definitely impact people who are intertwined in that criminal legal system.
Yeah. And another bill, I don't know if you've heard of this. I just happened to be looking at bills and I found this, but I know Assembly who's formerly incarcerated may be interested in it. It's Venetia Considine's, another ally. It's AB 246. It would require prisons to adopt good food purchasing programs, end for-profit food vendors, require a licensed dietitian to approve meals, and establish a prison farm program.
You know, I was humbled to be able to share space with the Nevada Department of Corrections director, Mr. Dorenza, with Assemblywoman Gonzalez. And as hard as I've been in the dungeon. I'm formerly incarcerated, so I'm always going to be leaning one way without unapologetically. But if I believe we are under new leadership now that has a chance, I really do. I'm not just saying that. Some of his bare bones empathy and compassion with incarcerated folks, it shows. So whereas a legislation like this, a shout out to Assemblywoman, because this is ones that it gives so much hope into the Department of Corrections. Even our gentlemen who are immersed in this, okay, they're immersed in that legislative cycle because a lot of people's freedom and hope in their freedom depends on our legislators. So when you get a piece of legislation like this from someone, it shows and has ripple effects all through the Department of Corrections that lets people know someone cares. Whether it passes or not, right? At least it gives folks a hope that at least it's one lady that you can write and say, hey, I appreciate that because it does need to change. And, I was incarcerated over 20 years ago, and Airmark reared their eerie head into the game. I vividly was incarcerated during that change. Nearly 60% of that was owned by then Governor Jeb Bush, the Bush's little brother, his wife. She owned Airmark, and that's how that contract got into the Florida Department of Corrections. Everything went up high, and the lunches that they provided went down. It's the recipe, right? That's the blueprint. Make the food unbearable and force people to spend money in that canteen. And needless to say, Airmark is in the mix here. So again, this is legislation. Thank you for waking my game up, sis.
Yeah.
I've supported 1,000%, and make sure the voices of directly impacted people are pulled out to support the Assemblywoman's legislation, because it is time. We can reprioritize funding that is being used for other things in the Department of Correction that is coming off the backs of families to make something like this a reality.
Yeah, definitely. Because your quote unquote punishment should be time served. It shouldn't be forced to have a diet full of food that sometimes I've had family members that are formerly incarcerated, moldy. You have
Man.
no idea what it is, and that shouldn't be part of your sentencing.
And even when you force us to the top ramen, I know it's impactful in our hood, and I know we sustained it. But I had a heart attack at 33 years old, Laura, not even 5 years after I got out of prison. And I know it was a lot of stress involved in my incarceration because I was out of state. But I know the diet that was provided in Florida had directly impacted me health wise. So again, another area of avenue of investment that oftentimes we don't even pay attention to.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Jovan Jackson's bill. Some may be a little triggering because, he's also formerly incarcerated. He's the first formerly incarcerated person to be elected that we know of in the Nevada state legislature. One of them, he is still working on language, so he doesn't have the bill number yet, but one of them is regarding children's mental health. He has found that some schools are using AI assisted mental health counseling for children. And unfortunately, some of those AI programs have suggested kids unalive themselves. And so ending that, also allowing mental health days. How would that be impactful, especially as we talk about juvenile justice?
Again, no bigger impact, right? It boils down to what happens, especially, and I'm talking about our babies, our Black and brown babies. They see them in an advanced state. Like, they can see a Black 12-year-old and envision him incarcerated. They have, so anything that we can do to repeal that and inflict humanity, we had to, and it's sad, we had to force humanity sometimes for these folks to have it on our children. It's not a guarantee. It's nothing that we should ever expect, and that's just sad. And even beyond the negative impacts of AI, so much of that mental health and the medicine is not culturally rooted. So when we don't have the medical attention that is culturally rooted to impact communities of color, it's sometimes a void anyway. So again, introducing those components to this facet is going to be very powerful, and it's much needed. I learned so much, and even digging into FAS, the fetal alcohol syndrome. You know how many of our babies is in custody that might be dealing with something that has never been checked on. So
Yeah.
again, and I know the negative impacts of even being in handcuffs. You know, out here they detain our babies in handcuffs. That has layered effects. So even after you get out of the handcuffs, now you're going to court. It's still so much trauma that's going to have to be addressed. Bringing these children's mental health to the front of the stage is very important, and it doesn't surprise me because I know Assemblyman Jackson cares in a real way
Mhm.
about youth as well as mental health.
Yeah, excuse me. And another piece of another piece of legislation he has is pre-sentencing dignity, prohibiting the use of restraint chairs in certain instances, and ensuring that the value of community service is $15 an hour. He's very open about his experiences being formerly incarcerated and his experiences being put in restraint chairs more than once. And what does it mean pre-sentencing dignity? What does that mean exactly?
And you know what, Laura? Again, I went to trial. I was privileged to go to trial on a bond. I can wear my little cute suit. No, the lady told me don't wear them dark ice cube colors. I was able to wear the little pinks and the yellows. But you have that privilege, and our brothers and sisters with their life in the balance always remember one's life, because your freedom is your life. So the freedom is in the balance, and going in there shackled, right? Even going in there in a suit that's too big, because you have to have that last dose of dignity, and be humanized. I think that's the overarching theme of the legislation. How can we humanize our folks in their most vulnerable moments? You know how much court watching we do as a collective. It's tough seeing, because you know our brothers and sisters ain't getting a fair shake, and they come into court without any dignity. So how can we change that? So even having legislation that, again, gives hope to our people who are currently under the trauma of the system. It gives them a little hope. And again, not surprising, from the legislator who has I feel like a kind of an unwritten obligation to make sure his lived experience is at the forefront of his interaction this session.
Yeah, I mean, he has definitely jumped right into it, and we really appreciate Javon as a freshman doing that, because it's not easy. And I think another one, which can, for me, is wild that this even has to be legislation, but automatic record sealing for people found innocent. And so there's people who, I mean, being arrested doesn't mean you're guilty. It just means you're being accused. And if you're found not guilty, it remains on your record and affects your ability to get jobs, housing. Are there people in Mass Lib's base that would benefit from the automatic record sealing?
You know, they co-director. I haven't committed a crime in over 25 years, and I'm still hampered by the result of that decision today, when it pertains to everything. So the most grounding of my experiences during was incarceration was how many people were innocent. You would be surprised at how many innocent people, whether you're innocent and just got railroaded into a plea, or you really were innocent and didn't do the crime that you were accused of. There's tons of people who didn't do what they were accused of and are still incarcerated. So that prevalency during my time of incarceration, it's only grown. And so for someone to be deemed innocent and still have to deal with that, what would be their arrest history, is blasphemous, and it does have a negative impact. We've passed legislation out here. I think the good assemblyman, God bless his soul, Tyrone Thompson, was with that ban the box. They've just been able to outsmart it and outsource it. So now you outsource it to Nevada, Utah, Arizona. They outsource it to them, and they can still check our people's history. And when that arrest history comes up, it nullifies you if anyone's being honest. So again, legislation that will positively impact people's lives, because we definitely know folks that have come home after completing sentences and then been kept found innocent.
Yes, amen to that. And I love how passionate you are about it too. I can hear it in your voice.
It's so real.
Yeah.
Again, that lived experience. And I think even when we testify, Laura, when we do public comments, sometimes it comes out, but they have to hear it. And when they don't hear it, it's easily to just have it be moot and void. So the more of us that can contribute and share that voice in those spaces, I think it's going to be powerful and have more impact than if we just watch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Jovan. I really do. And I'm just really proud of what you all have built with MassLib and continue to build. Even the what Des is doing with the youth as well is a big part of it. And I know that the youth are really important to you, juvenile justice.
Yeah,
So,
Des, we just lost a youth 2 days ago.
oh,
Someone that Des has built with, communicated with via text, via her birthday, saying happy birthday. And it's just sad. Like we gotta do more. We gotta do more. I know that we have Assembly Bill 91, the second look at. Some of our brothers that's in prison that's been done 20 years, they need to come home and help these neighborhoods. That's going to be a powerful dose of medicine for our neighborhoods when them gentlemen that have done 20, 25 years come home and let our babies know you have a life to live. It's sad burying 18-year-olds, man. That's
yeah,
crazy.
it is.
So we can do more.
And speaking of that, I wonder if you wanted to lift up Ricky Slaughter. I know you all presented the book he wrote it from the
Right.
inside. Do you want to talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, Ricky, again, phenomenal dude, right? It's just amazing. I wrote a novel during my incarceration. It wasn't a lot of people laying on their bunk writing books. This dude has done so much positive stuff with the time that he's been unrightfully in that cage. It's just amazing that you can hold on hope. I didn't do 2,000 days. I mean, these gentlemen have been gone 2 decades, and to still have enough fortitude to want to positively impact someone else's life. My hat goes off to Ricky, and he's a good dude, and he's very genuine. And I think everyone that's invested in him or immersed in his situation realizes that he's way more valuable out here than he is in that cage.
Yeah.
So I can only just hope and pray that the brother is as close to his days of freedom as he's ever been. I know he has monumental legislation. He has some legal work. I mean, this legislation could positively impact him. Even having his book in the space for Black History, where he's talking to coaching the little ones on how to be impactful during a legislative cycle. Your hat just goes off to a person, because the easiest thing for us to do is quit on ourselves. You get tired of holding on. You get tired of holding on. You get tired of believing that um, some kind of hope is worthy enough to come your way. I was incarcerated with a violent crime. Nobody feels the people that do violent crime deserve a second chance. So I just am blessed to know him, and I'm pleased that he's held on so fervently to what I hope is at the end now, and he's on his way home.
Yes, amen to that. Well, we want to say again, thank you, Jagada, for making the time for us. Our call to action is to join us, join Plan, join MassLib, definitely pushing our legislators to prioritize the people over profit, because this whole incarceration system that people make a lot of money. We talked about Aramark, and that's not the only thing. We can maybe get into that in another podcast.
Right.
We're doing testimony trainings. I know MassLib is doing a virtual stuff. You have your MassLib Mondays. We'll be sure to share that out as well. Making sure you're following MassLib and Plan on all of our socials, and also the hashtag NVLEG, which is the Nevada legislature. And thank you for tuning in to What's the Tea, and keep a lookout for the next episode.